Life is unbelievably difficult for those ethnic minorities living on the Yangtze River in China. So much so that non-governmental organizations or NGOs came from all around the world to help. My name is Adele Hatter. I came from Australia as a volunteer to support these communities with so many tasks and hardships involved. A year went by, and I finally began to acclimate into their culture, their ways, and their lives. But one terrifying, macabre experience brought the entire project to an immediate halt. Everything that was new, serene, happy, and beautiful suddenly became much worse. It involved Yan, a close friend of mine. We knew each other through the volunteer group. She was about the same age as me and helped her father, a local apothecary. During a hike up the mountains to pick rare plants for her father, Yan suddenly slipped, fell off a cliff, and died. I was devastated to hear about her death. My heart was broken to pieces because I just lost my best friend. At the funeral, I gathered a small bunch of her favorite wildflowers and placed them in her left hand and prayed with my eyes closed. She was lying there as if nothing happened, like nothing had changed, as if she was merely sleeping. She was such a gentle beauty, her cherry red lips a stark contrast against her snow-white, smooth complexion. About 2 days after the burial, I was working in my cabin when I heard a loud knock on the door coming from outside. I opened the door and found Jan's sister, looking so terribly sad, anxious, and scared. Tears were running down her cheeks as she told me that Jan's grave had been dug up by someone and that her body was now gone. I was speechless, and chills ran up and down my spine. I was so shocked that my legs began trembling, and I almost couldn't stand on my feet any longer. But I mustered up my courage and immediately accompanied Jan's sister and a few of the other volunteers to come to the grave. When we arrived, we saw the tomb had been destroyed, most likely by a shovel. Soil and stones everywhere, and the tombstone had been knocked over, and the lid of the coffin was open, with brown stains and a few maggots. This was the saddest and most revolting scene I had ever witnessed. I never thought such things were possible, and had certainly never heard of such stories back in Australia, where the authorities would have quickly taken matters into their own hands. I felt exhausted and distraught, so I decided to go to bed early. As I'd just fallen asleep, I suddenly felt like something or somebody was summoning me. I tried to open my eyes, but I still couldn't see anything. Slowly, I could recognize Jan in a bridal dress, surrounded by a misty haze. The fabric was a beautiful crimson red, and Jan suddenly burst into tears. The sound of her crying became more and more intense, but after a while, she vanished. Was it just a dream? It all seemed so real. The rest of that night, I only managed to sleep for a few hours. My mind was so full of emotions. My thoughts were scrambled. Several nights later, I dreamed of Jan again. This time, the scenery was different, and I was walking down the village's main street. I could see Jan from a distance, standing in front of a bridal shop, but as I got nearer, she disappeared again. Again on this night, I couldn't sleep. I was so nervous and began sweating profusely. That's when I realized that Jon was trying to reach out to me in my dreams. Was she trying to tell me something? The following day, I went to a nearby bridal shop as soon as it opened. After questioning the clerk, he told me that a strange visitor had been at the store. He identified that man as Pal. He was an unemployed young man who recently bought a wedding dress that cost about 200 yen. Then he came back a couple days later to buy makeup, accessories. The salesman found that a bit strange, given Pal's financial situation, but he did not question it. He was just too happy to make the sale. I immediately texted that information to Jon's sister, and we went to Pal's house together. Since I didn't know what to expect from this visit, I was impatient and terrified. I knew he'd been pursuing Jon for a long time, but she rejected him on numerous occasions. Deep down, I suspected that he was linked to the disappearance of Jon's body. We broke the door, opened it, and rushed inside. The whole house reeked, with the stench of death making us both instantly nauseous and on the verge of vomiting. We didn't think about what we were doing. We just entered each room with our noses covered, only to find Jon's body lying on a bed against the wall. Pal was hugging and lulling the corpse to sleep, and on the wall behind, a large crimson sea seemed to be blessing the macabre embrace. Just like in my dream, Jon was wearing a crimson bridal gown, but it was no longer pretty and immaculate. The whole dress was covered with a brownish, wet filth. As the rotting flesh had perspired through the fabric, critters were surrounding the decaying corpse. They were busy feasting on the shreds of skin and the various matters that had oozed out of the body orifices. Amidst the horror, Jon's beautiful face was now shriveled, and she looked even more grotesque with the heavy makeup that Pal had lovingly applied. The young man was indeed crazy in love. He couldn't acknowledge that she was dead, or that anything else he did was wrong. He even tried to convince the police that came to arrest him that she was very happy in his home, and that she would beg them to let him free. After what had happened, I could no longer live there, and I asked permission to leave the charity and return to Australia. The memory of this still haunts me today, and I know that people can really do anything for love, even the unthinkable.